What is going on at Warner Brothers Discovery this week? A lot's happened. I'm going to help you break it down. Hey everyone, I'm David Chen. I typically talk about TV, film, media, and technology. Today there was a Warner Brothers Discovery second quarter earnings call, and a lot of plans were announced for how they are going to move forward with the DC universe, with the fact that they own one of the crown jewels of the TV industry, HBO, and the streaming platform HBO Max. This is going to be a bit of a rambly video, a little bit unstructured, but there's so much going on that I felt like I had to make something about it. So here we go, strap in. A quick word before we begin, in case you're not familiar with what's going on here. A while ago, AT&T acquired Warner Media, which includes the DC stuff, which includes HBO. And AT&T had this nonsensical vision of like achieving synergies by combining the content of Warner with the technology of AT&T. It never came to pass. And they quickly realized, hey, we don't have enough money to make HBO Max into a viable streaming service long term. So they basically sold it off to Discovery. Discovery merged with them. And the new head of the combined company, David Zaslav, he now runs Warner Brothers Discovery, and he has already proven he is not afraid to make drastic cuts. In fact, he's committed to over $3 billion worth of cost cuts, which is going to inform a lot of what we're going to talk about today. The big thing that was announced is that HBO Max and Discovery will be combining into one huge streaming service. To be named, there's no details, pricing, logo or anything like that, and they're estimating that it's going to be summer of 2023 when that's going to come out. Now, what is kind of hilarious, cringy, and awful is that there were a bunch of terrible slides that accompanied this announcement. I mean, take a look at this one, which shows how they're positioning the HBO Max brand and the Discovery Plus brand. This isn't so terrible as a concept, but the fact that they used male skewing, female skewing, leaning in, leaning back, like it feels very, very outdated and cringy, and they shouldn't have done it. And they're getting completely dragged on social media for this slide, as well they should. I mean, it just looks awful. And also they made up a term, genre-dumb. What the heck? I know what they're trying to get at, but it just looks really silly, and probably a consultant got paid around $150,000 to make this slide. Here's another one showing how the combined HBO Max Discovery Plus is going to be a global powerhouse. And the thing that's weird about this slide is what they chose to put on it. You got Batman, Wonder Woman, Superman, you got Game of Thrones. These are iconic, generation-defining characters and properties. And you're putting them next to Shark Week and 90 Day Fiancé universe. It's not just 90 Day Fiancé shows. It's a universe? What are you guys doing? What are you guys doing? Then under iconic series and characters, you got Friends and Property Brothers and Sex and the City. I barely would have gotten excited about these iconic series in the 90s, let alone now. But that brings me to my first takeaway from this whole thing, which is that I think it's pretty safe we can expect HBO Max to get worse. HBO Max is one of my favorite streaming services. I really love the selection of content they have on there. I love the HBO Max originals. But based on what we're getting from today's call and slides like this one, it really feels like they don't give a crap about the old regime and all the shows they were trying to make. And it feels like they're going to be focusing more on profitability, which means reality shows and things of that nature. There's a list that was made on Reddit of all the stuff that Warner Brothers and Discovery have canceled since the merger. And it includes things like the entirety of CNN Plus, Raised by Wolves, Close Enough, Gordita Chronicles, Made for Love, Chad, Full Frontal with Sam B., and more. Some of these are really low budget shows, but they don't seem to care. I think they're going to be more focused on unscripted, and HBO Max originals are going to go down in scale and in terms of ambition. That's what it seems like based on the news that's happened thus far anyway, which is really, really sad because they had a good thing. They built up this entire platform from nothing, HBO Max, to become a leading streaming service, which is really, really hard. And now it seems like they're probably going to throw it away or at least not invest in it very much. So regarding HBO Max, it is a shame, and I am really bummed about it, and I'm not super optimistic about the quality of the shows we're going to see from HBO Max. I don't think they're going to stay as high as they are today. The second thing that was announced is Warner Brothers is getting back into theatrical distribution. They're getting back into theatrical exclusive windows, and I actually think that's a good thing. During the old regime of HBO, before it became part of Discovery Plus, Jason Kilar, an executive, initiated something called Project Popcorn. I don't know if you remember, but this was this huge, ambitious project where you could watch theatrical movies at home. It had never really been done before. Huge, big budget movies like Godzilla vs. Kong and The Matrix Resurrections, available on HBO Max at the same time as they're available in theaters. As a consumer, it was awesome to be able to not leave the house and watch these movies. But in terms of the theatrical film-going industry, kind of more mixed. On the one hand, it was great that Warner Brothers was actually supplying theaters with product, which not all movie studios were doing. But on the other hand, by making it available at home for streaming at the same time, you're kind of devaluing the product and devaluing the exclusivity. It was a really bold experiment. No one had ever destroyed the theatrical window that much before. But at the end of the day, we learned a lot of things over the course of the last year. Here's a big one. Movies that are theatrically exclusive are huge cultural events. And they are cultural events that they aren't really if you view them at home. If you release a movie in theaters, it has a potential to generate a lot of conversation in theaters, make a lot of money in theaters. And when that movie comes out on streaming, it will do better because it was in theaters. These are facts with some exceptions. And it seems like David Zaslav realizes this. And so he is committed to releasing movies in theaters and then putting them on streaming, but not just putting them straight to streaming. Which leads to the final point I want to make, and that's about what happened with Batgirl. I don't know if you heard, but Warner Brothers is working on a Batgirl movie. It was directed by Adil El Arbi and Bilal Fallah. These are the two directors of Bad Boys for Life. They also directed some of Miss Marvel, and they are hugely talented. Batgirl is being played by Leslie Grace, who you might have seen in The Heights. So a great team, and they had spent $70 to $90 million on this movie. The movie had apparently already been shot. It was in post-production. It had test screened, I think, a single time. And Warner Brothers announced this week that they would be canceling the movie. Not putting it straight to HBO Max, which was the original plan, not giving it a theatrical release. You're never seeing it again. Making matters even worse, apparently the directors were told while they were at one of their weddings, which is just absolutely a brutal way to find out that the last 7 months of your life is working on a project that's never going to be seen by anyone. This is not how you treat creative people. This is not how you engender loyalty. This is not how you make people feel like you are committed to artistic passion and purity. This is how you drive people away from your studio. It was done very, very poorly and very heartlessly and very cruelly. And I've been covering this industry for many years, and it's safe to say it's very, very rare that anything like this happens. Almost never. Sometimes like a smaller movie will disappear or you'll never see it again, but something of this size and scale, $70 to $90 million. They had Michael Keaton playing Batman again in this movie, Brendan Fraser in this movie. I mean, this is going to be potentially pretty interesting. For them to just cancel it and say, you're never going to see this movie is just brutal and pretty much unprecedented. Why did they do this? According to Deadline, it was for accounting reasons. They decided it would be better to take it as a tax write-off than try to release it even on HBO Max. Now, David Zaslav talked about the Batgirl thing today. He said that they couldn't justify it economically. Quote, the idea of expensive films going straight to streaming, we cannot find an economic case for it, end quote. And here's the thing, I actually kind of agree with him in this very specific case. It is really difficult to justify spending enormous sums of money on a movie that goes straight to streaming, right? Because think about it. How are you going to make that return on investment? Two ways. You either get new signups or you make sure existing signups stay on board. And there's a formula for calculating that. I'm sure they have. And it's really hard to justify spending $70 to $90 million and get enough new signups, enough people staying for the long term that it makes sense to drop not just one movie straight to streaming, but multiples and possibly keep doing it as a practice. The decision to make Batgirl and put it straight to streaming was made by the old regime. And again, David Zaslav coming in and saying, I'm taking no prisoners, I'm cutting costs. I am not afraid to make people really angry, including people that are loyal to Warner Brothers and working to generate more revenue and IP for Warner Brothers. He DGAF. He is just going to cut those costs no matter what. And I agree, economically, it does not make much sense to spend these kinds of movies and go straight to streaming and not even charge people for it. But it's the way in which he's doing it that is just awful. You do not treat creative people like this. Zaslav should be calling these people. He should be telling them about their plans. He should be writing them big fat checks to make sure they stay on board and keep working for Warner Brothers. And as far as I understand, which I may not be aware of everything, none of that's happening. These people are finding out about this news in the most brutal way imaginable, sometimes from social media, sometimes from friends. That's just not the way you want to treat people who are creating value for your company, unless you don't really give a crap about them, which I think seems to be the case. So that's my final takeaway, which is that the business fundamentals of what was announced today are actually pretty good. The way in which it's being done is heartless, cruel, terrible, counterproductive, and I think will ultimately be bad for the company. But You can't argue with the business basics. Zaslav also announced today that they're going to be trying to do the DC universe the same way Marvel did it, with a 10-year plan. My thoughts on that? I'm pretty sure they've been having a 10-year plan for the last 20 years, and it hasn't really come together yet. Now, I think they've made a bunch of awesome movies in that time. And there's a bunch of awesome movies still to come out. Like Shazam looks great. Black Adam looks great. There's going to be a new Joker movie, a new Batman movie. Those will probably be really good and do pretty well. But as of right now, the idea that all these DC properties can fit with each other and come together in a big synergistic way is pretty much in ashes. At the end of the day, I think this whole situation feels really depressing, because what we're seeing right now is how consolidation is impacting the industry. You have these two big media companies joining, and the result is going to be fewer choices, probably lower quality, probably lower costs for the stuff that they do make. But I think what's happening here is what happens when the company that made The Sopranos and Sex and the City and Game of Thrones is bought by the company that makes Here Comes Honey Boo Boo. And as somebody who loves great TV and film, it's a huge, huge bummer. All right, those are my thoughts on what's going on over at Warner Brothers. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you're afraid of, what you are excited about in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, I'd really appreciate it if you give it a like or subscribe and hit that bell icon to make sure you get notifications in the future. Thanks to my patrons at patreon.com/DaveChen for making my work possible. Really appreciate those folks at patreon.com/DaveChen, where you can sign up for exclusive audio episodes of the work that I do. Until next time, see you later.